Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. There behind the glass stands a real blade of grass. Be careful as you pass. Move along, move along. Come inside, the show's about to start. Guaranteed.
Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of the Minority Report. This week we're going to be talking about two proposals from the O'Malley administration. The first being PlanMaryland, and the second being septic system proposals that he has put in. We're fortunate today to have three Republican members of the House Environmental Matters Committee that are actually dealing with these issues this session. We have Delegate Jay Jacobs, Delegate Kathy Vitale, and Delegate Wayne Norman, our ranking member. Thank you for being here today. Well, Delegate Vitale, thank you again for being here with us today. I know you serve on the House Environmental Matters Committee, but more importantly, you have a background in county government, so you have experience and perspective on planning issues.
Certainly.
And so I wanted to start by asking you, I have to ask about the governor's quote, and I want to make sure I get it right, so let me read it. He said about PlanMaryland, "The state's not going to be a part of those stupid decisions, and we're not going to be subsidizing stupid decisions." What is your reaction as a former county government elected official to his statement?
You know, first when I heard the statement, I had to take a step back and make sure I heard it properly, because I couldn't imagine that the governor would make a comment such as that. You know, there's a level of civility from the state to the local and the local to state that clearly seemed to be lacking. But more importantly, I understand that the discussions that he was entering into were really important. However, and I can speak from the local level, we are, the jurisdictions spend a lot of time with their planning departments, with their community organizations, in making sure that when they formulate their community plan, that they do it in accordance with what that particular area wants. I think what the governor was suggesting was that local government's not qualified to make decisions such as they are, and he couldn't be more wrong.
Well, I also wanted to ask about the Secretary's comments from the Secretary of Planning. He is referring to PlanMaryland as a framework and a guidance document, and here's part of the guidance document. It seems to sort of underplay. So I wanted to get your reaction to, are there broader implications to this, even though it's not a law, given the size of some of these recommendations? And
there are, and I think that's where the local jurisdictions, unfortunately, are being fooled. When Secretary Hall spoke, he spoke of this is a 30,000-foot view. The idea would be that PlanMaryland would be the opportunity to join together all of the various jurisdictions for a cohesive approach. The problem is when you start to ask very specific questions. I'll give you an example. Local jurisdiction is responsible for their water and sewer plans. So that obviously determines growth. It guides growth, future versus present, for example. The Secretary said in a recent hearing that if they didn't like the way a jurisdiction put together their water and sewer plan, then it would be rejected. Well, if the local jurisdiction is going to be the one to do the planning, they didn't say, well, we'll talk to you about where you might make an adjustment, or are you sure you want to do this because maybe it's out of a PFA. They said it'll be rejected. Somehow or another, that's not a 30,000-foot approach.
well, and that actually raises a really good point too, because a lot of the discussion has been about local planning authority versus having a state czar planner, at the executive level. But what gets lost in this is individual property rights. So how do you think that this would affect individual property rights were it to move forward?
My biggest concern with PlanMaryland is that it's bad enough that the local jurisdictions aren't going to have a say. My concern is that the individual property owners are not going to be able to have any say. So you're going to have somebody from Annapolis trying to make a decision what's going to happen in Garrett County or what's going to happen over in Ocean City. And the reality is the jurisdictions are different, and their needs are different, their plans are different, the individual property owners' needs are different. And again, I thought about this as an example the other day when they were speaking. If you're out in Western Maryland, you're at the top of a hill. The idea that you've owned property in your family perhaps 20, 30 years, it's time to build the retirement home. The cost of a line, for example, a sewer line to that particular property is going to mean that they're not going to get to enjoy their retirement. So they've paid for the taxes, they've held on to the property. The property owner has done everything expected, and now we're going to drop a plan down on top of them that says, sorry, you no longer have any right to do anything. That's wrong.
Well, thank you again for sharing your perspective and your knowledge on this issue. Hi, Delegate Jacobs. We just finished talking with Delegate Kathy Vitale about the PlanMaryland concept, and I'm so glad that you're here because I know you represent a rural area which will be impacted by another proposal that the O'Malley administration has put out that has to do with septic systems. And many people view the septic system bill as a way to control growth as well. So could you tell us a little bit about the proposal this year and tell us how it's different from last year's?
Well, last year, the bill came in and we all felt as though it was a land grab at that time, and it had parts of it that certainly needed much more discussion. They formed this task force this year that's been, I think, 10 or 12 sessions discussing various parts of it. And what came up at the very end of this septic bill this year was a 4-tier system, which was not included last year, and had very little discussion and very little time to be vetted properly.
Okay, and along the lines of the 4 tiers that you mentioned, I know one of those tiers speaks directly to agriculture land. So could you explain the impact that this might have on the agriculture community?
Well, agriculture, the ag community is certainly concerned that it will diminish their value, and that seems to be one of the main concerns of what they can do with their land, and certainly the value that would be going forward.
I noticed too that another provision that's in the bill that's slightly different is dealing with the Maryland Department of the Environment. And the bill actually says that MDE can decide not to approve certain subdivisions if they're on septic. Is that new authority for that department? Because I've never known them to be involved in planning before.
Well, that's definitely new in this piece. And this year's bill, and MACO, I know for sure, is quite concerned about that piece in the bill that gives that authority to MDE. And certainly from my own background, local government, I think the best decisions are made at the local level, and certainly that's a big issue in rural Maryland.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, and we look forward to following this issue with you as you work through the Environmental Matters Committee.
Thank you very much.
Delegate Norman, we are glad to have you today as well. I just want to let our viewers know that you are the ranking member of the House Environmental Matters Committee, and like your colleagues that we spoke to earlier, you are dealing with many of these issues that impact planning and impact rural Maryland. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about today was the Chesapeake Bay Restoration Fund and the fees that people pay, and the O'Malley administration's proposal to increase those fees.
Right. It is certainly a big issue in our committee. It's a big issue with all of the ratepayers in Maryland that have private septics, and it will soon be very important to everybody who gets a private water bill. I love the Chesapeake Bay. Everybody that I know loves the Chesapeake Bay. And you want to be in favor of anything that's good for the Bay, but this House Bill 446 is basically an attack on the taxpayers in Maryland and anyone with a private septic. When Governor Ehrlich got this bill passed, the Bay Restoration Fund, there were a lot of people opposed to it. Yet it became law, and now people were very happy that these monies were going to be used to help other folks along the bay that had bad septics and to help restore some of these water treatment plants and sewage treatment plants. Our fund had millions of dollars in it, but that money was looted last year and used to help fund our budget. Under this bill, the governor wants to double the Bay Restoration Fund to $60. And while that might sound like a good idea if it's going to be used for the Bay, there's no assurance whatsoever, Jeannie, that it will be used for the Bay. We know that. We saw it last year.
So given the fact that gas prices are going up, a lot of taxes and fees are going up, we're still in hard economic times, what will this fee increase mean for the average household?
Well, it's going to be 90 cents per 1,000 gallons of water. And I don't know about your house, but there's 4 people in my house up in Bel Air. We're going to go through a lot of water, and it's going to absolutely mean an increase in my Bay Restoration Fund tax. And for any business that has anything to do with water, take your local restaurant. They go through a large amount of water. Their bills could be into the thousands of dollars.
Well,
I foresee that, I really do.
And I know too that at the end of the day, when it comes to collecting these payments, it's actually the municipalities that have to deal with this program should this bill pass in the legislature.
Correct.
So can you tell us a little bit about what it's going to mean to the municipalities that have to deal with?
If a house is on a private septic, it's just the anticipation is it will double to $60. But anybody who gets a municipal water bill, they're going to be paying a percentage. It's 90 cents per 1,000 gallons, which is not that much. The municipalities, whoever is generating these water bills, are going to have to look at each and every water bill to compute the additional tax that citizen's going to have to pay. And I believe that's an unintended consequence of the bill. It's going to grow government. It's going to grow clerks in municipal offices. That's what it's going to do.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here and for your leadership on the committee. And as we said with your other colleagues, we look forward to following these issues with you and look forward to hearing more from you about what's going on. So
Thank you for having us.
thank you.